Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today's recipe is actually going to be a basic one to show how we make our homemade pie dough. We like an all butter pie crust and we love for it to get really nice and crisp and nice and flaky on the edge. And of course, fully cooked through on the bottom. No soggy bottoms. If you want to see how we make our pie dough, keep on watching. This pie dough recipe makes enough to make a pie bottom for a 9.5 inch or 24 centimeter pan, and also make a lattice on the top. So it is quite a bit of dough. If you have a smaller pan or you need less, you might be able to get away with making 2/3 of this recipe. What you're gonna need is some very basic ingredients. We have 170 grams or 12 tablespoons of butter. This is cold and unsalted. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 300 grams of all-purpose flour. I almost forgot, a tablespoon of sugar. I have a bowl of ice water here and we're probably gonna use about 5 tablespoons of it. Today, I'm gonna combine this by hand just to show you how to do that because it's fairly easy. You can also combine this in a food processor if you want. So we're just gonna add our salt into the flour as well as our sugar and then just give it a nice mix. And then we're gonna take our butter and we're gonna cut it into cubes. If the butter is starting to get too soft, you can pop it in the freezer for a few minutes. And then we're gonna add the cubes right into the flour. Now that we have cubes of butter in here, we're gonna start mixing it together by hand. So just make sure that you have clean hands. And then we're gonna go in and smash our butter into the flour with our fingers. And we're trying to break the butter into smaller bits, pea-sized or smaller. And we're just gonna do that with all the butter until it looks kind of sandy in texture. You can also use a pastry cutter to cut the butter up into smaller bits. Or like I said, you can use a food processor and it will go much faster, but no equipment needed. Pretty happy with this consistency. It's looking very sandy. All of the bigger chunks are broken down. So now we're gonna start adding the ice water to bring this together into a dough. We're gonna start with 5 tablespoons for this and then see where that gets us. I'm gonna start trying to press it together. I can already tell I'm gonna need a little bit more, so we're gonna add another tablespoon. We have some of our dough holding together, but I have a little bit of graggly bits down here. So I'm just gonna do another 1/2 tablespoon. We're not trying to work it too much, but we're really just trying to get it to come together. It's holding together, but it's still pretty graggly. So now I'm gonna wrap this up and put it in the fridge for at least 30 minutes. While the dough is resting, you can start preparing your fillings for whichever pie that you're gonna make. And honestly, all that's left is really to roll out the pie dough and bake it. And that's how easy a homemade pie dough is.
Once the dough has rested, it's time to roll it out. So I take 2/3 of the dough and roll it out, making sure that it is big enough to fit in whatever pie tin. So I'm making sure that it's overhanging at least 2 inches on each edge. So that's around 14 inches in diameter. And then I roll it up onto the rolling pin and then unroll it onto the pie tin. And then instead of cutting off all the edges, I just like to patch it up and then actually fold under a lot of the edge so that you get a nice and thick crust around the edges.
Now that the base is done, I'm actually gonna pop this in the freezer while we work on the lattice.
For the lattice, I'm taking the remaining 1/3 of the dough and rolling it out into a very rough circle. I'm not so worried about the edges here, and just making sure that it's at least the same diameter as my pie tin. And then I'm gonna cut that into 12 equal strips. And then it's time to add whatever filling you like to your pie and then start working on the lattice. So I take 2 longest strips and work from the center outwards. And then it's really just a matter of overlapping each strip with the previous strip in an alternating pattern. There are a lot of good tutorials out there on the internet, but this is just, a matter of repetition and making sure that you're alternating and weaving that dough. Once I'm done with the weaving, I like to trim off the edges of the strips just to make sure there's a nice clean edge. Then we're going to go around and crimp the edges with a fork, also making sure that our pieces of the lattice are attached to the edge of the dough as well. I like to brush my pie dough with a bit of heavy cream at the end before baking, but you can also use an egg wash and then sprinkle it with sugar, and then it goes in the oven to bake. The baking will really depend on what kind of pie you're using, but at the end it should be nice and golden brown with a flaky crust and fully baked through at the bottom.
Thank you so much for watching our video. We hope you try to make homemade pie dough. It really is easy and worth it. We'll see you for the next video. Bye.